Have you ever had a moment where you sat in silence, maybe staring out the window or sipping your morning coffee, and thought, "There's so much I've wanted to say, but maybe it's better if I don't"? If that sounds familiar, you're not the only one. As we age, we carry more. Not just memories, but truths, regrets, and deep feelings we've never spoken aloud. And sometimes, we wonder, should I finally say it? Or should I just let it be? This stage of life comes with a new kind of wisdom, the kind that teaches us that silence, when chosen with love, can be more powerful than any speech. And the hardest part? Knowing the difference between what should be said, and what's better left unsaid. In this conversation, I want to talk to you heart to heart. Just you and me, like old friends. We're going to explore a few truths, real, emotional, and deeply human. Things we often feel but maybe shouldn't say out loud to our children. Not because we're ashamed, but because we've lived long enough to know that wisdom sometimes whispers, and that's enough. Now, before we jump in, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from? Comment below and share your city. I always enjoy hearing from you. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tips like these. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Point 1. Avoid blaming your own parents for how life turned out. Let's start with something many of us carry deep inside, feelings about our own parents and the way we were raised. You see, when we reflect on our lives, especially in these later years, it's easy to look back and think, if only my father had worked harder. If only my mother had been more supportive, maybe I could have had a better life. Those thoughts aren't unusual. In fact, they're pretty common. But they can also be heavy. It's natural to want to make sense of where we've ended up. And sometimes, that means looking back and pointing to what went wrong. But here's the thing, when we start blaming our parents out loud, especially in front of our own children, we're not just sharing a memory. We're teaching a mindset. We're saying, it's okay to carry resentment. It's okay to hold on to blame. That's not a weight we want to pass down. Because whether we realize it or not, when we speak harshly about our own parents, we're planting a seed in our children's minds. One day, they may look back and do the same. They may wonder if we were enough. If we gave them what they needed. And that's a painful circle that never truly ends. Most of our parents did the best they could with what they had. Were they perfect? No. But neither were we. And just as we hope our children will show us grace, we have the chance to model that grace by the way we speak about the people who raised us. Instead of saying, they messed up my life, maybe we can say, they made mistakes, but they loved me in the way they knew how. That one sentence can shift everything. It doesn't erase the past. But it softens it. And it shows our children that healing is possible, even from the hardest parts of our stories. We have the power to break that cycle. To show our children that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And when we do that, we give them something priceless, the freedom to move forward without carrying our regrets. Point 2. Don't share disappointment about your spouse with your children. Let's talk about something that many of us carry quietly, our long years of marriage. Maybe you've been married for decades. Maybe your relationship has seen the best and the worst. And maybe, somewhere along the way, a quiet disappointment settled in. Not the kind you talk about every day, but the kind that lingers in thoughts like, I could have done better, or, they never really understood me. It's tempting, sometimes, to let those thoughts slip out, especially when talking to our children as adults. We might say it casually, like, your father never appreciated me, or, I gave up my dreams for this family. And we may think, they're old enough. They'll understand. But even when they're grown, hearing those words from us cuts deep. Because to them, we are the roots of their childhood. Our marriage, no matter how imperfect, was the home they were built in. And when we start to chip away at that foundation, we shake more than just memories. We create confusion, sadness, and sometimes even guilt. They begin to wonder, did I miss the signs? Was I part of the reason they were unhappy? And that's not a burden any child, no matter their age, should have to carry. What we often forget is that our spouse isn't just our partner, they're also our child's other parent. Speaking negatively about them puts our children in a place they should never be, caught in between. Should they defend one of us? Should they stay quiet? Should they pretend it doesn't hurt? None of those are fair options. That doesn't mean we have to pretend everything was perfect. We can still speak our truth, but with care. Saying something like, "We had our ups and downs, but we tried our best," or, "It wasn't always easy, but there was love in the middle of it all," protects the dignity of the relationship while still being honest. Because at the end of the day, our children don't need to carry our disappointments. They need to see that love is complicated, but respect can last. And that even in the hardest seasons, kindness matters. Point 3. Don't compare your children to each other. Now let's talk about something that can sneak into our words without us even realizing it: comparing our children. It might seem harmless at first. Maybe one child calls every week, remembers your birthday, always checks in. The other? Not so much. And before you know it, a comment slips out like, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" or "Your brother always made time for me." We don't say it to hurt them. Most of the time, we're just speaking out of a moment of frustration or sadness. But those words? They go deep. Deeper than we might think. Even as adults, our children carry those comparisons in their hearts, and sometimes for a long, long time. And it's not just the one being criticized who feels it. The child being praised may also feel pressure to keep performing, to keep making us proud, afraid to ever fall short. So what ends up happening? One child feels like they're not good enough, and the other feels like they have to earn our love over and over again. Neither of those feelings are fair. Even worse, comparisons can chip away at the bond between siblings. They start to feel like rivals instead of teammates. Instead of being close, they drift apart, carrying silent hurt, thinking they're not equally loved. But here's what we know in our hearts: every child is different. One might be more responsible, one more sensitive, one more independent. And they each go through their own seasons of struggle and growth. They're not supposed to be the same. They're not supposed to live up to each other, they're supposed to become who they are. Our job, especially now, is to make sure they feel that. Not through big speeches or fancy gestures, but through the way we speak to them. Say things like, "I know you're doing your best," or "You've always had such a kind heart." Let them know they're seen, not for how they compare to someone else, but for who they are on their own. Because the truth is, love isn't a competition. And our words can either build connection, or quietly build walls. Let's be the voice that brings them closer, not pushes them apart. Point 4. Don't let complaints become the loudest part of your conversations. Let's be honest, getting older comes with its share of aches and adjustments. Our bodies don't move the way they used to. People we love are no longer around. The world feels faster, noisier, and sometimes, less familiar. And when you've lived through so much change, it's natural to feel frustration now and then. But here's where we need to be gentle with ourselves, and with those around us. If we're not careful, our conversations can become a steady stream of complaints. We talk about how our back hurts again. How expensive everything has gotten. How nobody visits like they used to. We start sharing what's wrong more often than what's right. And we may not notice it, but the people listening, especially our children, feel the weight of those words. They might not say anything, but they hear it. The sighs. The disappointment. The sense that everything is harder, sadder, or more difficult than it once was. That kind of talk doesn't just affect us, it affects them too. It can make them feel helpless, anxious, even guilty. Like they should be doing more. Like they've failed us somehow, even when that's not what we meant at all. Now this doesn't mean we can't be honest. If we're hurting, we should say so. If something matters to us, we should talk about it. But there's a difference between being open and being consumed by negativity. One brings people closer. The other pushes them away, even when they don't want to go. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can say is something simple, like, "I'm managing," or "I had a rough morning, but I'm okay now." Not because we're pretending everything's fine, but because we're choosing not to let pain be the only part of our story. We can still talk about the little joys, too. The bird we saw out the window. A memory that made us smile. A quiet moment of peace. These things matter. They remind our children, and ourselves, that even in the face of change, there is still beauty to be found. So let's choose our words carefully. Let them reflect not just what hurts, but what still gives us hope. Because in the end, that's what leaves a lasting impression. Point 5. Don't rely too heavily on your children, emotionally or financially. As we grow older, there's a shift that many of us feel, quietly, deeply. We've gone from being the ones everyone turned to sometimes needing support ourselves. Whether it's help getting to appointments, understanding paperwork, or even managing finances, the roles begin to change. And that's not easy, for us or for them. You see, asking for help is human. There's no shame in it. But when we start depending on our children more and more, without realizing it, we can create a pressure that quietly weighs them down. Not because they don't love us. Not because they don't want to be there. But because they're already carrying so much. Many of our children are in a challenging stage of life themselves. Balancing careers, raising their own children, managing their own health and finances. When we lean on them too heavily, especially without acknowledging it, it can stir feelings they may never express out loud. Guilt. Resentment. Worry. And over time, that silent tension can take a toll on the relationship. This is especially true when it comes to money. If we begin to rely on them financially, without open, respectful conversation, it can feel more like a burden than an act of love. And the truth is, none of us want to feel like a burden. We want to maintain our dignity, our independence, and our self-respect as long as we possibly can. That doesn't mean we should suffer in silence. But it does mean that how we ask matters. Saying something like, "This is hard for me to bring up, but I could use a little help," only if it doesn't put pressure on you, gives them room to love you freely, not out of duty. That one sentence creates space for compassion without guilt. At the same time, we can do our part to stay strong. Maybe it's revisiting the budget. Maybe it's reaching out to a community program. Maybe it's just being honest with ourselves about what we can still handle and what's slipping. Because our children deserve to live their lives with joy, not quietly worrying about how we're holding up. And we deserve to age with grace, not shame. Needing help doesn't make us weak. But asking for it with love, with openness, and without assumption, that's what makes us wise. Point 6. Don't overshare every health concern. Let's talk about something many of us deal with daily, our health. As we age, it becomes a bigger part of life. Doctor appointments start filling the calendar. New symptoms show up. Some days, you feel fine. Other days, everything aches. And when that happens, it's only natural to want to talk about it, especially with your children. You want them to know what's going on. You want someone to listen, to understand, maybe even to comfort you. That's human. We all need support. But here's the hard truth: when we begin to share every little concern, every ache, every test result, it can quietly take an emotional toll on our children. Even if they don't say it out loud, they're listening. They're absorbing every worry, every what if, every uncertain moment. And because they love us so much, they carry that weight. They might feel helpless, wondering how to fix it. Or guilty, thinking they're not doing enough. Sometimes, they even start dreading the next phone call, fearing what news might come. Now that doesn't mean we should hide serious health issues. If something important is happening, if a diagnosis is made, a treatment is needed, of course they deserve to know. They should be part of the decisions that affect our care and well-being. But not everything needs to be shared in detail. Not every sore joint, every off day, every worry that wakes us up at night. There's wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to keep it simple. You might say, "There's nothing serious, just checking in with the doctor," or "I've had some pain, but I'm managing." Those words offer honesty without causing unnecessary alarm. And here's something to hold on to: you don't have to talk about your health to feel seen. Your children love you for who you are, not just for what you're going through. They want to know that you're okay, that you're trying your best, and that you're not losing yourself to fear. So instead of letting illness define every conversation, let's choose to talk about what brings us peace, what still makes us smile. Let's remind them, and ourselves, that we're more than our medical charts. We are still living, still growing, and still full of stories that matter. Point 7. Don't make your children feel guilty for living their own lives. One of the hardest things about growing older is watching the people we love, especially our children, drift into their own busy worlds. The phone calls become less frequent. The visits feel shorter. Holidays change. And deep inside, we may feel a quiet ache, wondering, do they still think of me? Do they still need me? Of course they do. Love doesn't just disappear. But life gets full. Jobs, marriages, parenting, responsibilities, they all pull our children in different directions. And in those moments when we feel forgotten, it's easy to say things that come from pain, not intention. Phrases like, "You never call anymore," or "I guess you're too busy for me now," slip out before we even realize what we're doing. But those words? They land heavy. Not as reminders, but as guilt. And guilt doesn't build closeness. It builds distance. Our children shouldn't feel that spending time with us is a duty. We don't want them to visit out of obligation. We want them to come because they want to, because they feel safe, welcomed, and unburdened. And that happens when we release them from silent expectations and love them where they are, not where we wish they'd be. That doesn't mean we don't miss them. It's okay to feel lonely. It's okay to wish for more time, more connection. But how we express those feelings matters. Instead of guilt, try gratitude. Instead of, "I never see you," say, "It meant a lot to me when you stopped by last week." That kind of statement invites more love, not less. And remember, letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that the bond you've built with your children is strong enough to hold, even if there's space in between. It means saying with your actions, "I love you enough to let you live your life." Because the truth is, the greatest gift we can give them now isn't our presence at every turn, it's our quiet confidence in their journey. When they know they don't have to carry our sadness or rearrange their lives to keep us happy, they're more likely to come back, not out of guilt, but out of love. And that kind of return? That's the one that lasts. If you've listened this far, I want to thank you, not just for your time, but for your heart. These conversations aren't always easy. They bring up memories, feelings, maybe even regrets. But they also open a door to peace, to understanding, and to loving our families in a deeper, quieter way. And if something in today's message touched your heart, I'd love for you to share that in the comments. Even a simple, "Yes," let someone else out there know they're not alone. Because at this stage of life, what heals us most isn't always advice, it's connection. It's knowing that someone else understands. That someone else is walking this same path with love, and with grace. Here's to living these years with intention. With kindness. And with the quiet courage to let go of what no longer serves, and to hold on to what truly matters. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are still becoming, right here, right now.